Victor Chan thought he knew everything about his company, thought he understood what loyalty meant, until he watched an 8-year-old boy named Noah Reyes slide half his sandwich across a cafeteria table to a tired dyer. Janitor. What the boy said next would shatter every assumption Victor had about success, about kindness, and about what truly matters in life. He didn't know that this simple act of generosity would expose a truth so profound it would bring a billionaire to tears. And he certainly didn't know that the janitor receiving that sandwich was fighting a battle that would change Victor's entire perspective on wealth and responsibility. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower hummed with the quiet efficiency of money being made. Victor Chan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, watching the city spread out below him like a circuit board of ambition and desire. At 38, he commanded an empire worth over $2 billion, built from the ground up through a combination of brilliant strategy, ruthless determination, and an almost supernatural ability to predict market trends. His company, Meridian Technologies, employed over 15,000 people across 12 countries. Yet Victor sometimes felt as disconnected from his workforce as he did from the clouds drifting past his windows. The mahogany desk behind him bore the weight of contracts worth hundreds of millions, merger documents that would reshape entire industries, and quarterly reports that would make shareholders weep with joy. But today, those papers felt like relics of someone else's life. Victor's reflection in the window showed a man who had everything, and somehow still felt hollow, wearing a $15,000 suit that fit perfectly, but couldn't quite conceal the restlessness that had been eating at him for months. His assistant, Margaret, knocked and entered with her usual precise efficiency. She had been with Victor for 8 years, long enough to read his moods like weather patterns. "The board meeting has been moved to 3 o'clock, she said, setting down his coffee with mathematical precision. "Also, HR needs your approval on the new employee satisfaction survey." Victor turned from the window, his dark eyes settling on the stack of papers Margaret had placed beside his coffee. Employee satisfaction surveys. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was being asked to approve questions designed to gauge how his employees felt about a company he wasn't even sure he understood anymore. "Margaret, how long have you worked here?" The question caught her off guard. In 8 years, Victor had never asked her anything remotely personal. "8 years, sir, since you hired me right after the company went public. And in those 8 years, have you ever felt like you really know me, or that I really know you?" Margaret's composure wavered slightly. She had expected discussions about quarterly projections or acquisition targets, not philosophical inquiries about their professional relationship. "I'm not sure I understand what you're asking, sir." Victor walked to his desk and sat down, his fingers drumming against the polished surface. "I built this company from nothing. I know every financial detail, every market position, every competitive advantage we have. But I realize I don't know the first thing about the people who actually make it all work. I don't know their names, their stories, their struggles. I don't know if they respect me or fear me or simply tolerate me because I sign their paychecks." The admission hung in the air between them like a confession. Margaret had worked for powerful men before, but she had never heard one acknowledge such vulnerability. "Perhaps you could implement more interactive policies," she suggested carefully. "Town halls, meet and greets, that sort of thing." Victor shook his head. "No, that would just be more performance. Everyone would put on their best face, tell me what they think I want to hear. I need to see the real company, the one that exists when I'm not in the room." He leaned back in his chair, an idea beginning to form. What if I could observe without being observed? What if I could see how people really behave when they think no one important is watching? Margaret's eyes widened as she began to understand what he was suggesting. "Sir, you're not thinking of going undercover in your own company?" That's exactly what I'm thinking. Victor stood up, pacing to the window again. I could change my appearance, take on a different identity, work alongside my employees for a few weeks, see the company from the inside out. But sir, that would be incredibly risky. What if someone recognizes you? What if there are security issues? What if— Victor held up a hand to stop her concerns. Margaret, I've made billion-dollar decisions based on less information than this. I've trusted my instincts in situations where failure would have meant losing everything. This is just another kind of reconnaissance. Another way of gathering intelligence about my own business. Over the next 2 weeks, Victor threw himself into planning his undercover operation with the same obsessive attention to detail he brought to every major business decision. He studied his employees' schedules, their routines, their gathering places. He learned about the cafeteria culture, the break room dynamics, the informal hierarchies that existed beneath the corporate org chart. He hired a discreet image consultant who specialized in theatrical disguises, someone who could help him transform from a recognizable CEO into an invisible member of the working class. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the perfectly styled hair, replaced by a simple, slightly messy cut that made him look years younger. Colored contact lenses changed his distinctive dark eyes to a soft brown. Carefully applied makeup added subtle signs of aging and weariness. His expensive suits were replaced by modest khakis and polo shirts from discount stores. He practiced changing his posture, his walk, his speech patterns, until he could become someone entirely different. He created a backstory for his new identity. David Martinez, a 40-year-old divorced father of 2 who had recently moved to the city for a fresh start. David had worked various jobs in maintenance and facilities management, was quiet but reliable, and kept to himself. Victor even created a fake employment history, complete with references from a temporary agency that specialized in placing workers in large corporations. The hardest part was explaining his temporary absence to the board and his senior management team. He told them he was taking a sabbatical to pursue a special project, leaving Margaret in charge of day-to-day operations with strict instructions to contact him only in genuine emergencies. He would monitor the company's performance remotely, staying connected through encrypted communications and regular briefings from his most trusted executives. On a gray Monday morning in October, Victor Chan, the billionaire CEO, ceased to exist, and David Martinez, the facility's maintenance worker, reported for his first day of work at Meridian Technologies. The security guard barely glanced at his temporary ID badge as he signed in. Just another face in the stream of workers beginning their week. Victor felt a strange thrill as he walked through the lobby he had designed, past the marble walls and abstract sculptures he had personally selected. Now seeing them through the eyes of someone who earned $35,000 a year instead of $35 million. His supervisor, a weathered man named Frank Kowalski, met him at the service elevator. Frank had been with the company for 23 years, had worked his way up from night janitor to facilities manager, and had the kind of practical wisdom that came from decades of keeping things running behind the scenes. "So you're the new guy," Frank said, looking Victor up and down with the assessing gaze of someone who had trained countless temporary workers. "Martinez, right?" "That's right, sir. David Martinez. I appreciate the opportunity." Frank led him to a supply closet that smelled of cleaning chemicals and industrial soap. "Here's the thing, Martinez. This isn't glamorous work. You'll be cleaning offices, emptying trash, mopping floors, fixing whatever breaks. The people upstairs, they mostly won't even see you. You'll be invisible to them, just part of the machinery that keeps this place running. You okay with that?" Victor nodded, suppressing the irony that he was about to become invisible in his own company. "I'm just looking for steady work, sir. I don't need to be noticed." "Good attitude. The pay is decent, benefits aren't bad, and if you work hard and keep your nose clean, there's room for advancement. I started as a janitor myself, worked my way up over the years. The company's been good. To me." As Frank showed him around the building, Victor saw his corporate empire from an entirely different perspective. The gleaming executive floors he was used to represented only a small fraction of the building's activity. Most of the real work happened in the middle floors, in cubicles and conference rooms and break areas where thousands of employees spent their days creating the products and services that generated Meridian's massive profits. His first assignment was working with the janitorial crew that serviced the 15th through 20th floors. The team was a mix of longtime employees and recent hires, people from various backgrounds who had found their way to this work for different reasons. There was Maria Santos, a grandmother from El Salvador who had been cleaning offices for 15 years while putting 3 children through college. There was Tom Richardson, a former construction worker whose back injury had forced him into lighter work. There was Jennifer Walsh, a recent college graduate who was cleaning offices by night and pursuing her master's degree in social work by day. Victor quickly learned that the invisible workforce he had never noticed was actually a complex community with its own culture, its own unwritten rules, its own system of mutual support. The janitors knew which executives were kind and which were dismissive, which departments generated the most trash, which offices had the best snacks in their break rooms. They knew about the affairs, the office politics, the behind-the-scenes dramas that shaped the company's daily life. The key to this job, Maria told him during his first week, is remembering that you're not just cleaning, you're taking care of people's spaces, making their work environment better. Even if they don't notice you, you're making their lives a little easier. Victor found himself genuinely moved by the dignity these workers brought to their jobs. They took pride in their work, even when that work was undervalued and underpaid. They supported each other through personal crises, celebrated each other's successes, and maintained a sense of humor even in the face of daily indignities. It was during his second week that Victor first noticed Noah Reyes. The boy appeared in the cafeteria every day around noon, always carrying a brown paper bag that looked like it had been reused dozens of times. He was small for his age, with serious dark eyes and a quiet demeanor that made him seem older than his 8 years. He always sat alone at a corner table, methodically eating his sandwich while reading a book that looked far too advanced for a child his age. Victor first saw the boy during his lunch break, sitting across the cafeteria with his own modest meal. The company cafeteria was a study in social stratification, with executives dining in a separate area with cloth napkins and table service. Middle management clustering around the salad bar and sandwich station, and workers like Victor grabbing quick meals before returning to their shifts. But Noah seemed to exist outside these hierarchies, a small figure moving through the adult world with remarkable self-possession. What struck Victor most was the boy's stillness. While other children might have been fidgeting or talking or playing games on their phones, Noah ate his lunch with methodical precision, pausing occasionally to make notes in the margins of his book. He seemed completely absorbed in his reading, creating a small bubble of concentration that somehow made him invisible to the bustling activity around him. Victor learned from Frank that Noah was the son of Carlos Reyes, one of the night janitors. Carlos worked the overnight shift, cleaning the executive floors when the building was empty. He brought Noah to work during school breaks and summer vacations when childcare was too expensive and leaving an 8-year-old alone at home wasn't an option. The boy would do his homework in the break room, read his books in the cafeteria, and sleep on a cot in his father's supervisor's office when the workday stretched too long. "Carlos is a good man," Frank told Victor. "Been through more than anyone should have to handle. His wife died 2 years ago. Cancer. Medical bills wiped out their savings. He's been raising the boy alone ever since, working double shifts to keep their heads above water. The kid's smart as a whip, gets straight A's, but they're barely scraping by." Victor felt a strange tightness in his chest as he listened to Frank's words. He had spent years making decisions about employee compensation and benefits, viewing labor costs as abstract numbers on financial statements. He had never considered that behind every line item on his budget reports was a human story, a family struggling to build a life in the margins of his corporate empire. Over the following days, Victor found himself watching Noah more closely. The boy's routine never varied. He would arrive at the cafeteria at exactly 12:15, sit at the same corner table, and eat his lunch while reading. His meals were simple but nutritious, usually a sandwich, a piece of fruit, and a small carton of milk. He never bought anything from the cafeteria, never asked for seconds, never complained when his sandwich was the same peanut butter and jelly combination day after day. What fascinated Victor was the boy's reading material. While other children his age were reading picture books or simple chapter books, Noah was working his way through complex novels, biographies, and even technical manuals. Victor saw him reading everything from Charles Dickens to Stephen Hawking, from historical accounts of the civil rights movement to introductory books on computer programming. It was on a Thursday afternoon that Victor witnessed the moment that would change everything. He was mopping the floors near the cafeteria when he saw Noah approach the table where Carlos was sitting during his break. Carlos looked exhausted, his uniform wrinkled from hours of work, his face drawn with the kind of fatigue that comes from carrying too much responsibility for too long. Victor moved closer, pretending to clean the nearby tables while straining to hear their conversation. Noah sat down across from his father and opened his brown paper bag. Inside was his usual sandwich, but today there was something different in his manner. He looked at his father's empty hands and then at his own lunch, making a calculation that seemed far too mature for his age. Without saying a word, Noah tore his sandwich in half. He carefully rewrapped one portion and slid it across the table to his father. "You forgot your lunch again," he said simply. Carlos shook his head. "No, mijo, I ate earlier. You need to eat all of that to grow strong." But Noah was persistent. "Mama used to say that kindness feeds the heart. She said when we share our food, we're not just feeding someone's body, we're feeding their soul too." Victor felt something break inside his chest. He gripped the mop handle tighter, his knuckles turning white as he watched this 8-year-old boy insist on sharing his meager lunch with his father. The casual reference to his mother, the mature way he spoke about kindness and sharing, the determination in his small voice as he refused to let his father go hungry. It all combined to create a moment of emotional intensity that Victor was completely unprepared for. Carlos accepted the sandwich with tears in his eyes. "You're just like your mama," he whispered. "She would be so proud of the man you're becoming." Victor had to turn away, pretending to focus on his mopping while he struggled to maintain his composure. In his executive suite, he had made decisions affecting thousands of families without ever considering the human cost. He had approved budget cuts that reduced employee benefits, had outsourced jobs to increase profit margins, had treated his workforce as expendable resources rather than human beings with dreams and struggles, and children who needed to eat. The next day, Victor arrived at work early and positioned himself where he could observe the cafeteria during lunch hour. He watched Noah go through his usual routine, but this time Victor noticed details that had escaped him before. The boy's shoes were worn, with duct tape covering a hole near the toe. His clothes were clean, but clearly second-hand, with careful patches where the fabric had worn thin. His backpack was falling apart, held together with safety pins and string. But what struck Victor most was Noah's dignity. Despite his circumstances, the boy carried himself with quiet pride. He was polite to everyone he encountered, helped clean up after himself without being asked, and never complained or asked for anything he didn't need. He seemed to understand that his presence in the building was a privilege, not a right, and he conducted himself accordingly. During his break, Victor found himself walking past the table where Noah was reading. The boy was absorbed in a biography of Nelson Mandela, making notes in a small notebook as he read. Victor couldn't help but stop and comment, "That's pretty heavy reading for someone your age," he said, trying to sound casual. Noah looked up, his dark eyes serious and intelligent. "My mom used to say that reading is like traveling without leaving your chair. She said the more I read, the more I'd understand about the world." "Your mom sounds like a wise woman." "She was. She died when I was 6, but I remember everything she taught me." Noah's voice was matter-of-fact, but Victor could hear the underlying sadness. "She said that education is the one thing nobody can ever take away from you. That's why I try to read as much as I can." Victor felt his throat tighten. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Noah's face lit up with the first genuine smile Victor had seen from him. "I want to be a doctor. I want to help people who are sick, like my mom was. I want to find cures for diseases so other kids don't have to lose their parents." The simple declaration hit Victor like a physical blow. Here was a child who had experienced profound loss, who lived in circumstances that would challenge most adults, yet who had channeled his pain into a dream of helping others. The contrast between Noah's selfless ambition and Victor's own pursuit of wealth and power was too stark to ignore. "That's a wonderful goal," Victor managed to say. "Being a doctor takes a lot of education, though. Medical school is very expensive." Noah nodded seriously. "I know. My dad works really hard to save money for my college fund. He works nights here and weekends at another job. Sometimes I see him falling asleep at the kitchen table with his bills spread out, trying to figure out how to pay for everything." The boy's voice dropped to a whisper. "I wish I could help him more. I try to be good and not ask for things we can't afford, but sometimes I think it would be easier for him if I wasn't here." The words pierced Victor's heart. He wanted to tell Noah that he was wrong, that his father's love for him was probably the only thing keeping Carlos going, but he couldn't find his voice. Instead, he reached out and gently touched the boy's shoulder. "Your father works hard because he loves you," Victor said. "And I bet he's proud of you every single day. Don't ever think you're a burden. You're his whole world." Noah looked up at him with those serious eyes. "Are you a father?" The question caught Victor off guard. In his real life, he had never married, had never had children. His relationships had always been secondary to his business ambitions. He had told himself that he was too busy building his empire to focus on family. But standing here talking to Noah, he realized he had simply been afraid of the vulnerability that comes with loving someone more than yourself. "No," Victor said quietly. "I never had children. I always thought I was too busy with work." "That's sad," Noah said with the brutal honesty of childhood. "My mom used to say that love is what makes all the hard work worth it. She said if you work so hard that you forget to love people, then you're not really living." Victor felt tears threatening to spill over. This 8-year-old boy, who had every reason to be bitter about his circumstances, was offering him wisdom about life that he had never learned in all his years of business success. He excused himself and walked quickly to the nearest restroom, where he stood at the sink and tried to process the emotions that were overwhelming him. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, Victor saw David Martinez, the maintenance worker, but he also saw something else. He saw a man who had spent so many years climbing the ladder of success that he had forgotten to look around and see who he was stepping on along the way. He saw someone who had accumulated billions of dollars but had never learned the simple lesson that Noah's mother had taught her son: that love is what makes all the hard work worth it. That evening, Victor went home to his penthouse apartment and sat on his balcony overlooking the city. The lights spread out below him like a galaxy of ambition and dreams, but for the first time in years, he felt disconnected from it all. He thought about Carlos working through the night, cleaning offices so that executives like Victor could arrive to pristine workspaces each morning. He thought about Noah sleeping on a cot in a supervisor's office, dreaming of becoming a doctor while his father sacrificed everything to keep those dreams alive. Victor had always prided himself on being a self-made man, but now he realized that no one succeeds alone. His empire had been built on the labor of thousands of people like Carlos, people who showed up every day and did their jobs with dignity and professionalism, even when those jobs were undervalued and underpaid. He had been so focused on profit margins and market share that he had forgotten about the human cost of his success. The next morning, Victor returned to work with a new sense of purpose. He threw himself into his maintenance duties with genuine enthusiasm, talking to his coworkers about their lives and struggles. He learned that Maria was worried about her daughter's college tuition, that Tom was struggling with medical bills from his back injury, that Jennifer was working 2 jobs to pay for graduate school. Every conversation revealed another layer of the hidden struggles that existed within his company. He also began to observe the interactions between management and staff with new eyes. He watched executives walk past janitors without acknowledgement, saw how decisions made in boardrooms affected the daily lives of workers who had no voice in those decisions. He witnessed the casual disrespect that people in power showed to those they considered beneath them, and he felt ashamed of his own past behavior. But it was his growing relationship with Noah that affected him most deeply. The boy had begun to trust him, sharing stories about his mother and his dreams for the future. Noah told him about the books he was reading, the subjects he was studying, the science experiments he conducted at home with supplies he had saved up to buy. Despite his circumstances, Noah's curiosity about the world was boundless. His determination to educate himself was inspiring. "I want to understand everything," Noah told him one day. "I want to know how the human body works, how diseases spread, how medicines cure people. I want to know about history and science and literature and mathematics. My mom said knowledge is power, and I want to have enough power to help people." Victor realized that Noah possessed something that he had lost somewhere along his journey to success, a sense of wonder about the world and a genuine desire to use his abilities to help others. The boy's poverty hadn't diminished his dreams. If anything, it had focused them with laser-like intensity. It was during his 3rd week undercover that Victor witnessed the event that would change everything. He was cleaning the executive floors late one evening when he encountered Carlos beginning his shift. The man looked worse than usual, his face pale and drawn, his movements slower than normal. "You okay, Carlos?" Victor asked, genuinely concerned. Carlos looked around to make sure no one else was listening, then slumped against the wall. "I don't know, David. I got some bad news today. Noah needs glasses, real expensive ones. The doctor says his vision is getting worse, and if we don't get him the right prescription, it could affect his schoolwork." Victor's heart sank. "How much do they cost?" $800. Might as well be 8 million. Carlos rubbed his eyes tiredly. "I'd been working extra shifts for months, but every time I save a little money, something else comes up. Last month it was the car repair. The month before that, Noah got sick and we had to go to the emergency room. I'm drowning, David. I'm working as hard as I can, but I can't get ahead. What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I called my insurance company, but they only cover basic frames. The special lenses Noah needs aren't covered." Carlos straightened up, trying to regain his composure. "I'll figure something out. I always do. Maybe I can pick up some weekend work or sell something." Victor wanted to tell Carlos not to worry, that he would take care of everything, but he couldn't reveal his true identity. Instead, he listened as Carlos poured out his fears about his son's future, his guilt about not being able to provide better for Noah, his exhaustion from working multiple jobs just to stay afloat. "The worst part is watching him pretend that everything is okay," Carlos said. "He never complains, never asks for things we can't afford. Yesterday he told me he doesn't really need new glasses, that he can see fine. But I watch him squinting at his books, holding them closer and closer to his face. He's struggling, but he won't admit it because he doesn't want to worry me." That night, Victor lay awake in his luxurious bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Carlos's words. He thought about the $800 that stood between Noah and clear vision, a sum so small that Victor wouldn't have noticed it as a rounding error in his quarterly reports. He thought about Noah squinting at his beloved books, trying to hide his difficulty seeing from his father who was already carrying too much weight. The next day, Victor made a decision that would change everything. He called Margaret from a secure phone and asked her to set up a meeting with the head of human resources. When she asked why, he told her he was ready to come back from his sabbatical, but that he needed to make some changes first. "I want you to research our employee benefit packages," he told her. "I want to know exactly what we're providing in terms of health care, vision coverage, education assistance, and family support. I want to compare our benefits to industry standards, and I want to identify areas where we can improve." Margaret was puzzled by the request. "Sir, are you considering expanding our benefits package?" "That would be a significant expense." "I'm considering a lot of things," Victor replied. "I want that research by the end of the week. And Margaret, I want you to look into setting up a employee hardship fund, something that can provide emergency assistance to workers who are facing financial difficulties. I want to know how other companies handle these situations." Over the next few days, Victor continued his undercover work while Margaret compiled the research he had requested. What she found was troubling but not surprising. Meridian Technologies offered benefits that were competitive but not generous. Healthcare coverage was adequate but had high deductibles that could bankrupt families facing serious medical issues. Vision coverage was minimal, covering only basic eye exams and standard frames. There was no emergency assistance fund, no program to help employees facing unexpected financial hardships. Victor also learned more about the company's promotion and advancement policies. While there were theoretically opportunities for advancement, in practice, workers like Carlos were trapped in their positions by a combination of factors. They lacked the college degrees required for management positions, they couldn't afford to take time off for additional training, and the company provided no support for continuing education. The more Victor learned about his own company's employment practices, the more ashamed he became. He had created a system that kept good, hard-working people locked in low-wage positions, while executives like himself accumulated wealth that far exceeded any reasonable measure of their contribution to the company's success. It was on a Friday afternoon that Victor decided to reveal his true identity. He had been undercover for almost a month, and he had learned everything he needed to know about the real culture of his company. But first, he wanted to do something for Noah and Carlos. That evening, Victor approached Carlos during his shift. "I heard about Noah needing glasses," he said. "I want to help." Carlos looked surprised and touched. "That's very kind of you, David, but I can't accept charity." "I'll figure something out." "It's not charity," Victor said. "It's one human being helping another. Besides, Noah is a special kid. He's going to do great things someday, and I want to be part of making that possible." Despite Carlos's protests, Victor insisted on providing the money for Noah's glasses. He told Carlos he had some savings from his previous job, that he wanted to help because he had been in similar situations and knew how hard it was to ask for help. After much persuasion, Carlos finally accepted, tears streaming down his face as he thanked Victor for his generosity. The following Monday, Victor arrived at work early and went straight to Frank's office. "I need to tell you something," he said. "My name isn't David Martinez. I'm Victor Chan, the CEO of this company." Frank stared at him in stunned silence for a long moment. "You're who?" Victor explained everything. His decision to go undercover, his month-long experience working as a maintenance worker, and everything he had learned about his company and his employees. Frank listened in amazement as Victor described his interactions with Noah and Carlos, his growing understanding of the struggles faced by working-class families, and his plans to make significant changes to the company's employment practices. "I need your help," Victor said. "I want to implement changes that will make a real difference in people's lives. I want to improve our benefits, create advancement opportunities, and establish support systems for employees facing hardships. But I can't do it alone. I need people like you who understand what it's really like to work here." Frank was quiet for a long time, processing what he had heard. Finally, he spoke. "Mr. Chan, I have to say, this is the most unusual thing I've ever experienced in 23 years with this company. But if you're serious about making changes, then yes, I'll help you. These people deserve better than what they've been getting." Over the next week, Victor worked with Frank and other supervisors to develop a comprehensive plan for improving employee conditions. They proposed significant increases to healthcare benefits, expanded vision and dental coverage, and the creation of an emergency assistance fund that could help employees facing unexpected financial crises. They also outlined a program for providing educational opportunities and career advancement paths for workers who wanted to move into management positions. But Victor wasn't finished. He had one more surprise planned, and it centered on Carlos and Noah. On the Friday afternoon of his first week back as CEO, Victor called an all-hands meeting in the company's main auditorium. Word had spread that the CEO was back from his sabbatical and had important announcements to make. But no one knew what to expect. Victor took the stage and looked out at the assembled crowd of employees. In the back, he could see Carlos sitting with the other night shift workers who had been asked to come in early for the meeting. Next to Carlos was Noah, who had been invited to attend what had been described as a special company event. "I want to tell you about the last month of my life," Victor began. "I want to tell you about what I learned when I went undercover in my own company." A murmur ran through the crowd. Victor spent the next hour describing his experience as David Martinez, the maintenance worker. He talked about the dignity and professionalism of his coworkers, the hidden struggles that existed within the company, and the lessons he had learned about leadership and responsibility. "I learned that this company's greatest assets aren't our technology or our market position," he said. "Our greatest assets are the people who show up every day and do their jobs with pride and professionalism, often nationalism, under difficult circumstances. I learned that true leadership isn't about commanding from the top. It's about understanding and serving the people who trust you with their livelihoods." Victor then announced the comprehensive benefits improvements that would be implemented immediately. The crowd responded with applause and cheers as he outlined expanded healthcare coverage, the new emergency assistance fund, and the educational advancement programs that would be available to all employees. But Victor wasn't finished. He looked directly at Carlos as he spoke his next words. "I also learned about the power of kindness and sacrifice. I learned about a father who works multiple jobs to provide for his son, and about a son who shares his lunch because he understands that kindness feeds the heart. I learned that some of our employees are doing extraordinary things under ordinary circumstances, and that they deserve recognition and support." Victor motioned for Carlos to come to the stage. The man looked confused and frightened, but with encouragement from his coworkers, he made his way to the front of the auditorium. "Carlos Reyes has been with this company for 5 years, Victor announced. "He works the night shift, cleaning our offices so that we can arrive each morning to a clean, professional environment. He's a dedicated employee and a devoted father. Effective immediately, Carlos is being promoted to supervisor of facilities management with a salary increase to $65,000 per year and full benefits including comprehensive health care and vision coverage." The crowd erupted in applause. Carlos stood on the stage with tears streaming down his face, unable to believe what was happening. But Victor wasn't finished. "I also learned about the power of dreams and determination. I learned about a young man who lost his mother but hasn't lost his hope for the future. Noah Reyes is 8 years old, and he wants to be a doctor. He wants to help people who are sick and find cures for diseases. He reads advanced books, studies science, and never complains about the circumstances life has dealt him. Victor looked out at Noah, who was sitting wide-eyed in the audience, clutching his new glasses. The Meridian Technologies Educational Foundation is hereby establishing the Maria Reyes Memorial Scholarship, named after Noah's mother, who taught him that education is the one thing nobody can ever take away from you. This scholarship will provide full funding for Noah's education through medical school, including living expenses and all associated costs. The scholarship will also be available to other children of Meridian employees who demonstrate exceptional academic achievement and financial need. The auditorium erupted in sustained applause. Victor watched as Noah ran to the stage and embraced his father, both of them crying tears of joy and disbelief. The image of that small boy hugging his father while hundreds of people cheered was something Victor knew he would remember for the rest of his life. But the moment that meant the most to Victor came after the formal ceremony was over. As employees filed out of the auditorium, Noah approached him with his characteristic serious expression. "Mr. Chan," he said, "I want to thank you for everything you've done for my dad and me, but I also want to ask you something." "What's that, Noah?" "Will you be my friend? I mean, I know you're important and busy, but I'd like to talk to you sometimes about books and science and stuff. You were nice to me when you were David Martinez, and I hope you'll still be nice to me now that you're Mr. Chan." Victor knelt down to Noah's eye level, his throat tight with emotion. "Noah, I would be honored to be your friend. In fact, I think you might be the best friend I've ever had. You taught me things about life that I never learned in business school." "What did I teach you?" "Why, you taught me that kindness feeds the heart. You taught me that sharing what you have makes you richer, not poorer. You taught me that love is what makes all the hard work worth it." Noah smiled, the first completely carefree smile Victor had seen from him. "My mom would have liked you, Mr. Chan. She always said that the best people are the ones who care about others, not just themselves." Over the following months, Victor transformed Meridian Technologies from the inside out. The changes weren't just policy adjustments. They were fundamental shifts in how the company valued and treated its workforce. The Emergency Assistance Fund helped dozens of families facing medical crises, car repairs, and other unexpected expenses. The Educational Advancement Program allowed workers like Maria to pursue management training while continuing their jobs. The expanded benefits package ensured that no employee would have to choose between health care and groceries. But perhaps the most significant change was in Victor himself. He instituted regular walking tours of the facility, not as publicity stunts but as genuine opportunities to connect with his employees. He learned their names, asked about their families, and listened to their concerns. He established an open-door policy that wasn't just theoretical. It was a genuine invitation for any employee to bring problems or suggestions directly to his attention. The relationship between Victor and Noah became one of the most meaningful aspects of his new life. Every Friday afternoon, Noah would come to Victor's office to discuss the books he was reading and the science experiments he was conducting. Victor found himself looking forward to these conversations more than any board meeting or business negotiation. Noah's curiosity and enthusiasm reminded Victor why learning and discovery mattered, why building something meaningful was more important than simply accumulating wealth. As Noah's academic performance continued to excel, Victor became more involved in his education. He arranged for Noah to have access to advanced tutoring, enrolled him in summer science programs, and even took him on field trips to medical research facilities and universities. Watching Noah's eyes light up as he learned about cellular biology or observed surgical procedures, Victor felt a pride and satisfaction that surpassed any business achievement he had ever accomplished. Carlos thrived in his new position as facilities supervisor. His natural leadership abilities, combined with his deep understanding of the building's operations and his respect among the workers, made him extraordinarily effective. He implemented efficiency improvements that saved the company thousands of dollars while making working conditions better for his team. More importantly, he became an advocate for other employees, helping Victor identify problems and opportunities throughout the organization. The changes at Meridian Technologies didn't go unnoticed in the business community. Initially, some investors and competitors criticized Victor for what they saw as unnecessary generosity toward employees. They argued that the improved benefits and wages would hurt profitability and set a dangerous precedent for other companies. But Victor had learned something during his month undercover that his critics didn't understand. Treating employees well wasn't just morally right, it was good business. The improved working conditions led to higher productivity, lower turnover, and better customer service. Employee satisfaction scores reached record highs, and the company's reputation as an employer of choice helped attract top talent from competitors. More importantly, the cultural transformation created a sense of shared purpose that had been missing from the company. Employees who had previously viewed their jobs as merely paychecks now saw themselves as part of something meaningful. They took pride in working for a company that valued them as human beings, not just as labor resources. The story of Victor's undercover experience became legendary within the company, but it also spread beyond Meridian Technologies. Business schools began using it as a case study in ethical leadership. Other CEOs sought Victor's advice on improving employee relations. The Noah Reyes Memorial Scholarship became a model for other corporate education programs. 2 years after his undercover experience, Victor stood once again at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, looking out at the city below. But this time, his perspective was fundamentally different. The buildings and streets below weren't just abstract representations of economic opportunity, they were communities filled with people like Carlos and Noah, people with dreams and struggles and stories that mattered. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Margaret entered with her usual efficiency, but their relationship had evolved over the past 2 years. She was no longer just an assistant, she had become a trusted advisor and friend. "Noah is here for his Friday visit," she announced with a smile. "He says he has something exciting to show you." Victor's face lit up with genuine happiness. "Send him in." Noah entered the office, now 10 years old, and wearing the confident smile of a child who knew he was valued and supported. He had grown taller over the past 2 years, but he still carried himself with the same quiet dignity that had first caught Victor's attention in the cafeteria. "Mr. Chan, guess what?" Noah said, practically bouncing with excitement. "I got accepted into the advanced science program at the university for next summer. They said I scored higher on the entrance exam than some high school students." Victor felt his heart swell with pride. "That's incredible, Noah. Your mother would be so proud of you." "I know she would. And Mr. Chan, I've been thinking about something. When I become a doctor, I want to work in hospitals that serve poor families, like the hospital where my mom was treated. I want to make sure that kids like me don't lose their parents because they can't afford the best medical care." End quote. The simple declaration hit Victor with the same emotional force as that first moment in the cafeteria when Noah had shared his sandwich. Here was a 10-year-old boy who was already thinking about how to use his future success to help others, who understood that privilege comes with responsibility. "That's a wonderful goal, Noah. But remember, you don't have to wait until you're a doctor to start helping people. You're already making a difference just by being who you are." "What do you mean?" "What do you mean?" Victor walked over to his desk and picked up a framed photograph. It showed him and Noah at a company picnic, both of them laughing at something Carlos had said. It was one of Victor's most treasured possessions. "You changed my life." "Noah, You taught me that success isn't about how much money you make or how powerful you become. It's about how many lives you touch and how much kindness you put into the world. You taught me that when an 8-year-old boy shares his sandwich with his father and says that kindness feeds the heart, he's not just sharing food, he's sharing wisdom. Noah looked thoughtful for a moment. Do you think my mom would be proud of both of us? You for changing your company, and me for not giving up on my dreams. I think your mother would be incredibly proud. I think she's watching over you every day, seeing you grow into the remarkable young man she knew you could become. As Noah left that afternoon, carrying books about advanced chemistry and molecular biology, Victor reflected on the journey that had brought them together. The man who had once viewed employees as expendable resources had discovered that the real treasure of his company wasn't in its profit margins or market share, but in the human stories that unfolded within its walls every day. He thought about Carlos, who had been promoted again and was now considering pursuing a college degree through the company's education program. He thought about Maria, who had completed her management training and was helping other immigrant workers navigate the challenges of corporate life. He thought about all the families who had been helped by the Emergency Assistance Fund, all the children whose educations were being supported by the scholarship program, all the lives that had been improved by simple acts of recognition and support. The transformation of Meridian Technologies became a testament to the power of empathy and human connection in the business world. But for Victor, the real victory wasn't measured in improved employee satisfaction scores or reduced turnover rates. It was measured in moments like Noah's weekly visits, in Carlos's growing confidence as a leader, in the knowledge that his company had become a place where people could build meaningful lives while pursuing meaningful work. Years later, when business historians wrote about the Meridian Technologies transformation, they would focus on the innovative benefit programs and the progressive management practices. But Victor knew that the real story was much simpler and much more profound. It was about an 8-year-old boy who shared his sandwich and spoke about kindness feeding the heart. It was about a father who worked multiple jobs to keep his son's dreams alive. It was about the recognition that every person, regardless of their position or paycheck, deserves dignity, respect, and the opportunity to build a better life. The boy who had once sat alone in a cafeteria, squinting at advanced books through broken glasses, was now on a path that would take him to medical school and beyond. The father who had once felt overwhelmed by the weight of his responsibilities was now a respected leader in his own right. And the CEO who had once been disconnected from his own workforce had learned that true success comes not from what you accumulate, but from what you give back. As Victor prepared to leave his office that evening, he paused at the window one more time. The city spread out before him looked the same as it had years ago, but he saw it with completely different eyes. Behind every light in every building was a human story, a family working to build a better future, dreams waiting to be supported and nurtured. He thought about Noah's words that afternoon, about wanting to help poor families access quality medical care. In a few years, when Noah was ready for college, Victor planned to establish a new program that would place Meridian scholarship recipients in medical schools specifically focused on serving underserved communities. It would be another way of ensuring that the lessons Noah had taught him continued to ripple outward, touching lives that they might never even know about. The transformation that began with a shared sandwich in a cafeteria had become something much larger, a model for how business leaders could create value not just for shareholders, but for all the human beings whose lives intersected with their companies. It was proof that kindness, as Noah's mother had said, really did feed the heart, and that when hearts were fed, everything else followed. Victor turned off the lights in his office and headed home, carrying with him the satisfaction that comes from a life lived in service to others. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight, he would go to sleep knowing that a 10-year-old boy named Noah Reyes was reading about molecular biology with perfect vision. dreaming of the day when he could heal the sick and comfort the suffering, carrying forward the legacy of a mother who had taught him that love is what makes all the hard work worthwhile. The story of the millionaire CEO who went undercover and was moved to tears by a little boy in a cafeteria became more than just a corporate transformation. It became a reminder that the most profound changes in the world often begin with the smallest acts of kindness, and that sometimes the greatest teachers come in the most unexpected packages. In sharing half a sandwich, Noah Reyes had shared something much more valuable: the wisdom that true wealth is measured not in what we keep for ourselves, but in what we give to others.